You'll travel through time, screw things up, and your dog will never be born. This is the T3 Pro. It's a moving magnet and moving coil phono preamp. This can do both, but in all likelihood, most are going to be shopping this for a moving magnet cartridge, since pairing it with an MC would sort of be like putting Ferrari seats in your Pinto in some ways. I have another table with a Denon DL103R MC cartridge, but ideally I'd be looking for something around 60 dB of gain. So we're going to stick with the moving magnet review for the majority of the discussion today. But to be fair, I did test it with the DL103R, and it was able to provide enough gain and loading options to make it work fairly well. Surprised me a bit actually, but for the sake of how this one is going to be used in most cases, let's just hone in on the most obvious use case and pair it with an MM cartridge. The vintage Shure M91ED cartridge, an upgraded Gico stylus. I would venture to guess a lot of you have had a Shure M91ED cart at one point or another if you grew up in the 70s with vinyl. It's before my time, in all honesty, but I've noticed a number of vintage tables that I've picked up to come with these. It's a really surprisingly good cartridge when you pair it up with a good stylus too. The vintage tables, they really just do it for me a lot more than anything modern. I even have a new old stock V15 cart that I need to home on one of these tables as well. I'll eventually get a new turntable design in just to test drive it, but at this point, these do all I could really need, and they have the look that I'm going for. Let me know below your thoughts on vintage tables versus the new ones. Is the main driver pushing to the new the maintenance or the fixes that some of the vintage pieces may need? Or you just don't see many of the vintage models available for decent prices? I would almost guess it's almost a combination of the two. Seems like every decent one that I see posted online is one, overpriced, and two, needs work. And you can almost always assume the stylus is shot or broken. But for whatever reason, I just feel the need to bring these back to life. The BIC turntable I have here was actually my dad's, and it's generally my heavy hitter as far as listening goes. After tuning it up, which is basically cleaning off all the old grease that they applied in the 70s and replacing it with some modern lubrications, everything works as it should. I have another older video actually going through this one and getting it back into service if you're interested in the restoration side. And on that note from earlier about vintage tables generally needing a new stylus, I'm quite certain I was likely the reason for a broken stylus or two when I was little. Sorry, Dad. What's included today is really simple: the T3 Pro and a power supply. Taking a look at this one, it's a nice little metal case. We have gain, which is selectable up to 39 dB, as well as volume control. Both knobs are notched and feel pretty solid. The volume control is a bit different, and I'm honestly not certain how to use it in relation to the gain and the amplifier and all that it's routing into. I would just assume put the gain to the best dB suited for the cartridge, then max out the volume, and then just leave all my volume control up to the integrated amplifier. That way I can benefit from a remote and just an easier user experience. I guess I can understand the volume knob if you're going direct into a powered amplifier, but I would have thought in most cases people would bring this into an integrated. And this might just be a case of trying to cover all the bases. It's sort of like some of these new desktop amps coming out with amplification for passive subs. I can't say I know anyone who's actually using passive subs rather than active, yet a few companies have started adding the feature. I have a couple small desktop amps right now, in fact, that I have in for review. I think one of the areas of improvement we might see in the coming years from some of the brands like Aiyima is a bit more specialization. And they have gotten better, but I hope to see more products that really hone in on something, provide a great value for the price, rather than something that tries to do everything all at once. A great example lately are the amps. They've come a long ways, and some of the releases from the usual suspects actually perform a lot better than you'd expect. Oh, and if you have any other thoughts on that volume and gain ratios on the T3 Pro, let me know below. If we look at the back, we have two sets of RCAs. The input is going to come from the turntable. The output will go to the amplifier of your choosing. There's also a ground post that'll need to be connected if your turntable has it. The RCA that goes from the output to the amplifier will need to be supplied by you. The input side in most cases comes with the turntable. A note to remember, if you're plugging this into your amp, do not plug this into the input named phono if it's available. This is only to be utilized if you're not using an external preamp. Basically thinking of plugging into phono as boosting something already boosted. You'll travel through time, screw things up, and your dog will never be born. Just plug this preamp into the standard input and you're good to go. If you guys, gals, could take a moment and like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. The channel's been doing really well, but that's only because of you, your comments, likes, and just general interactions. It helps to push these out to a much wider audience. That's my sales pitch for the day. Now let's get back to it. Just handling this unit, it feels pretty solid. The casework is nice and definitely something we've seen improve over the years since the original A07 amp. These little units have really come a long ways. If we compare it to something like the Mani 2 here, the casework is as good or better, and bonus to the T3, it uses a duller red light in comparison to the blinding light on the Mani 2. Now, am I saying this unit is better than the Mani 2? No, but that also costs 50% more than this Aiyima that can be had for under $100 on Amazon right now. One of the biggest spec differences you're going to see is the gain options. Spending more gets you more options there. For moving magnet carts, the 39 dB on the T3 Pro is enough, but it starts to fall short in flexibility to pair up to some of the demanding MC carts. If you were to ask me how this compares to the built-in phono preamps on turntables, I couldn't tell you. I have 4 tables and none have a built-in phono stage. I do, on the other hand, have some budget integrated amps that have it, and I can honestly tell you that this increased the performance by quite a bit. I liken it to getting a better cartridge. It's in most cases a noticeable improvement, especially on cheap gear with internal units. The externals generally have more options for gain and loading and are better shielded from noise, as phono source signals are really susceptible to this sort of thing. Plus, you often get some bonus features like this filter on the bottom that's for cutting out some of that extra rumble that certain vinyl puts out. A lot of the talk today is assuming you have new modern equipment. In most of these cases, I would suggest trying out an external. But if you're using vintage gear like this SX880, you might want to try the internal first and see if that's all you need. The phono stages in these older receivers were the main attraction in some ways, so there was a lot more time dedicated to the quality and performance here before they were sort of pushed aside and became an afterthought in the mid-80s. Another thought there is it's kind of fun to match up gear from the same era, but like everything else, you will lose some flexibility staying internal with the vintage gear. Gain and loading options will be limited in comparison to the T3 Pro that we have here. If you're thinking, I already have a turntable and everything works fine without this separate box, so why do I need this? That can boil down to a couple of things. If it works fine without, you either have a turntable with an integrated phono preamp. A lot of them offer the ability to utilize a built-in or select over to the line. If you have the option to select line, you can put this in between your turntable and your amplifier for, in many cases, a simple upgrade to the sound. If none of this applies to you and you're still spinning vinyl, then you likely have a phono stage built into your integrated amplifier. Quality can vary greatly between integrated phono stages, but in all likelihood, if you're dealing with cheaper gear, a simple external phono preamp like this T3 Pro can really help out on the standpoint of more gain as well as flexibility between cartridge settings. So where does this one fall with me? I think it's good, but it's not great. The price point is really good. The value is high at 100 or less. My only knock at this price is the MC performance, which works, but could in some cases be limited. My target for this one is carts, where the gain amount is fine for most cases. I don't mention much MC here because I'd like to see a bit more gain for that utilization. And really, when you're hitting this price point, you may as well specialize with the products that you're most likely to pair with. I guess the most logical jump from here is the Schiit Mani 2. It's more powerful, has a few more options, but costs 50% more. Does it sound 50% better? No, I don't think so. It tended to give a little more of a black background and rejected interference a bit better, but both did a good job and were a step up over the integrated options that I compared with. The T3 Pro can certainly be said to increase clarity and perceived dynamics when you compare it to the budget phono stages, and with its price point being 100 or less, that's the likely pairing here, so it's hard to complain with what I heard on this one. One note that I would like to see a bit more clarity would be the RIAA equalization of plus or minus 3 dB. That's a bit of a range, so it'd be nice to see a chart on that one, just to see how everything measures out, since it's something that can be audibly noticeable. Some brands purposely move these targets to in some ways add color to the sound, but in general, most have a preference for accuracy here. If your budget is around $100 and you want to improve your phono stage over an integrated unit, I think this one is worth a shot. Plus, it's available on Amazon, so if it doesn't work out, the return process is about as simple as it could possibly be. At this point, the channel has over 100 videos covering new and vintage gear, expensive and budget, and even a few DIYs, like this CSS speakers that I'm finishing a part 2 video for now. If everything goes according to plan, I really feel like this finish is going to rival some of the really high dollar designs. It might be a good one to watch if you're into that. As always, I would really appreciate a like and subscribe if you could. Without all of you, this channel wouldn't even exist. So thanks for all the support as well. Take care. Later.